Good morning. Hi, everyone. I thought it was happy, but it is post-Passover. Hi, everyone. This is Jewish Talk, coming to you live from Nassau Community College on 90.3 WHPC, also streaming live on the iHeart and the iTunes app. We can be seen right now, right from the studio. Hello, everybody. I'm waving on my Facebook Live page. And this program is, of course, archived later on Spreaker.com. So hi there. My name is Rabbi Pearl. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and all depends where you're listening or watching. I know I sound like I'm upbeat, and I should have been upbeat, and I was looking forward to being here upbeat, but I am not upbeat. As you know, I'm going to share with you the real story, what happened in Poway, in the Chabad of Poway in California. So stay tuned for what really happened in the details. As you know, upon the close of the Sabbath and the Passover holiday in New York, where we came out of a wonderful holiday with my family and community, we learned of the shooting at the Chabad of Poway in San Diego. We learned of the murder of an innocent woman and the wounding of several others who were celebrating their faith in the temple on the terra firma of our freedom-loving country. And of course, it's appalling and heartbreaking. And we begin by extending our heartfelt sympathy to the family of Lori Gilbert Kay upon the terrible loss. And we mourn with you and in your time of grief. And our prayers and for a speedy recovery go to Rabbi Yisrael Goldstein, who is the Chabad leader of that community. More details in a moment. And others who were viciously injured by the shooter. I must say that we are very grateful for the heroic efforts by the individuals in the synagogue, blocking the shooter from inflicting further injury and preventing greater loss of life. We are very thankful to the California Highway Patrol in San Diego for their quick response in apprehending the shooter. As you well know, Chabad Lubavitch is an integral component of Jewish communities in every one of the states, in hundreds of communities nationwide, and in Jewish communities throughout the world. And here on Long Island, thank God, many, many Chabad houses. Our regional representatives are very concerned, all of us are concerned for the safety of every Chabad house center, and we are grateful for all the support by city and state agencies who work closely with us to enhance our security measures. As you may know, in California itself, there are 207 Chabad centers serving its Jewish population across 129 cities. So here we are in New York. We're grieving the loss of life there. We're determined, my friends, to ensure that all of our centers on Long Island, in the state, around the country, are safe and protected from such hateful violence. What saddens me this morning, of course, is that anti-Jewish violence in the United States is now risen to a level that cannot be ignored or dismissed. And therefore, dear friends, we appeal to the members of our government on the local, state, and federal levels, media agencies, schools, teachers, college professors, and university leaders to take lead and take the initiative to uproot the destructive scourge that threatens the core values of this great country. Let us remember that while primitive hatred against Jews was allowed to fester in many other countries, ultimately to the detriment of all their citizens, this great United States, the American values of tolerance and loving kindness, and its respect for the dignity and value of humanity have been its greatest assets. The alarm bells of recent events are ringing, and we therefore call upon leaders from across the political divides to stop the dangerous downward spiral of anti-Semitism. So in the spirit of Passover that we've just concluded, the Festival of Freedom, may Hashem bless that each of us commit ourselves to work to bring security, healing, and unity to our fractured nation. So here it is. It's happened again. It was Shabbos. Jewish people praying in the synagogue found themselves targeted and marked for death again, the victims of another shooting. This was 6 months after the rampage in the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh that left 11 Jewish worshippers dead. Another hate-filled gunman burst into a synagogue on Shabbat, intent on murder. Now, the Chabad Synagogue of Poway, California, is about 25 miles north of San Diego. It was packed up with 60 worshippers and lots of children. In addition to being a busy Shabbat, it was actually the 8th day of Passover. And on the 8th day of Passover, we include the Jewish Yizkor prayers to remember those who have passed away. And there were many congregants who had made a special effort to attend to remember their loved ones. So as they prayed, a local 19-year-old burst into the synagogue, brandishing this assault rifle, screaming that Jews are ruining the world, and shooting at terrified congregants in the synagogue's lobby. 3 people were injured, and one 60-year-old mother, Lori Gilbert Kay, was murdered. I must tell you, my brother, Rabbi Shalom Pearl, is married. His wife, his dear wife, is the sister to Rabbi Yisrael Goldstein, who was injured, as I'll soon explain. And my brother, I called him last night, told me that he knows the lady, he knows this family, because he's often gone to that Chabad house to spend time with his brother-in-law, and he knew Lori Gilbert Kay, and she truly is a Jewish heroine, and will be remembered as a heroine in Jewish history. My friends, she sacrificed her own life, throwing herself in the path of the murderer's bullets, and it's clear that such heroism and good deeds are not only the characteristic of dear Lori in death, but that was the way she lived her life. And she was a pillar of that community, constantly doing charity and good deeds for those in need. Now, there are lots of, I would say, reports going on, and I want to tell you, before I got on the air this morning, just a moment before I got on the air, we received a direct communique from Rabbi Yisrael Goldstein's sister. And she reports what really went down, because she spoke to her brother, who had to go through 8 hours of surgery trying to save his 2 middle fingers, I believe on his right hand. What actually happened? Rabbi Goldstein had gone to wash his hands, and he came out of the area, the wash area, and there he met up. He saw that dear Lori was had fallen to the ground. She'd been shot by this gunman, and he, seeing the gunman, grabbed the gun. My friends, he grabbed the gun, and in doing so, the man let off the bullet, shooting off 2 of his fingers. But in the interim, the gun actually at that moment jammed. And at that point, there was another man who was a border control man, a retired man, I believe, a policeman, who had come to do his prayers for Yizkor. He started running after him. And the rest you read on in the press. But what I'm trying to tell you is his own sister reported to us this morning that because he grabbed the gun, he stopped him from going into the general sanctuary where everybody had been gathered for the Yizkor services. And he spoke, and we'll certainly hear more of the many miracles that happened that moment. But clearly, as his sister so beautifully and so movingly shared with us, he said he sacrificed his 2 fingers to save his community. My friends, that is from his sister. That is from his sister telling us that he stood up, he grabbed a man's gun, and in doing so, even though he lost his fingers, Hashem made a miracle that the gun jammed. And, of course, he was then scared and ran out, and then they ran after him. And again, read about it. Congregant Oscar Stewart, he was a former U.S. soldier. He heard the shooting in the lobby, and he realized there was a gunman in the building. He ran out and chased him. He looked scared, and the man reports, this is Oscar Stewart, a U.S. soldier. I yelled as loud as I could with a mean sergeant voice, and I yelled, "Get down!" and I ran after him. This is what's being reported. Some witnesses, again, also give witness and report that the gunman's gun jammed, and now we know what was going on. The rabbi grabbed the gun, and he saved his community from further destruction. One of the little girls, Noah Dayan, 8, was a girl who originally came from Sderot in Israel, and she was hit by shrapnel in the face and her leg. Her uncle, Almog Peretz, 31, was shot in the leg as he was ushering children to the playroom for safety. And of course, as you may know, the synagogues are filled, and during the Yizkor service, the children are asked to leave, and all those, thank God, who have their parents alive. So a lot of people running around. In the hours after the attack, authorities labeled the shooting as a hate crime. The shooter posted a hateful, racist, anti-Semitic screed on social media before going on his rampage. And he said he was inspired by massacres in 2 mosques in Christchurch in New Zealand in March, and by the massacre in the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh. This was a pointed attack on Chabad, on a visible Jewish community there, and this is a collective attack, of course, on all Jewish communities. This is anti-Semitism unleashed, my friends. And I must say, in a pattern where prejudice is minimized, in an environment where intolerance is trivialized, and when prejudice becomes politicized, we shouldn't be surprised. Jews are under attack and offering thoughts and prayers. We must do that before going back to our regular routines, but it's not enough. It's not enough, my friends. When one of us is gunned down at prayer, we're all attacked. In the memory of the heroic Laurie Gilbert Kay, who was gunned down in the lobby. She was in the lobby area, and she also reported stepped in the way to save someone else's life, or a child's life, some say, who was in the lobby at that time. She was gunned down in Poway because she was Jewish. And therefore it behooves us on a spiritual level to look carefully into ourselves. Let's grow in her memory and resolve to be proud Jews, to study the Jewish text, to strengthen our bonds with each other. And let's use this period after Passover, which is an auspicious time for spiritual development as we prepare ourselves for the holiday of Shavuos, to respond with depth and inwardness and true transformation. I want to share with you when I heard from my brother's wife on this special report on what actually happened. It reminded me of a very important aspect of a dimension of this last 2 days of the holiday of Passover. As you well know, that the last 2 days of the week, the 8 days of Passover, commemorates the Jewish people crossing over the Sea of Reeds. But the background story is fascinating of what initiated this miracle. The individual was a prince of the tribe of Judah. He was the brother-in-law of Aaron the high priest. His name was Nachshon, the son of Aminadab, the 5th generation descendant of Judah, the son of Jacob. Now, he might have remained anonymous throughout his life, but then at one moment, he took a jump, and this individual changed history. All of this happened on the 7th day of Passover. Again, 7 days after leaving Egypt, the Israelites found themselves trapped between a raging sea and the vengeful Egyptian army. The entire nation stood at the shore and saw the Egyptian army coming to them and getting closer. The situation seemed hopeless. And the Torah says that the children of Israel cried out to God. And then God turns to Moses and says to him, "What are you crying about? Speak to the children of Israel and let them travel on." The order was given to go forward, sea or no sea. But how could they? There was this great sea of reeds in front of them. And the sages tell us in the Talmud, what transpired during those frightening moments When Israel stood facing the Sea of Reeds, and the command was given to move forward, each of the tribes hesitated in saying, "We do not want to be the first to jump into the sea." One individual, my friends, Nachshon, the son of Aminadab, saw what was happening and jumped into the sea. Following Nachshon's lead, the Israelites entered the sea. It was then that God told Moses to lift his staff over the water, and the sea split. The entire story seems strange. If God wanted to perform the miracle, why the need for Nachshon to jump in first? What was Nachshon thinking when he jumped in? Who gave him a right to what seemed to be a suicide mission? I want to tell you a story of how kosher became complete in Israel's army. But have in mind, my friends, Rabbi Yisrael Goldstein, who I know personally. As I said, his sister is married to my brother, Rabbi Shalom Pearl, in California. At the key moment, Rabbi Goldstein, seeing the gunman, grabbed the gun. The gun went off, shooting off two of his fingers. And then the gun jammed. And then the rest, you all know. But my friends, the rabbi himself shared with his sister that he gave up his two fingers to save the rest of his community. Can you imagine if he got into the sanctuary where everybody was gathered? Hayalesia. My friends, let me tell you that from time to time there are individuals who step up to the plate and make the jump. This Nachshon ben Aminadab jumped into the water, saw everybody doing nothing, jumped in there, and the sea opened up. And when it opened up there, in Egypt, all the waters in the land of Canaan and elsewhere in the world at the same time. When a person is ready to jump and jump for the right cause, he creates a cascade of goodness and positivity and help for so many around the world. I want to share with you a story that I learned and heard over the weekend. Not many people know that in the Israeli military, all the kitchens are kosher all year round. And before Passover comes around, they kosher all the kitchens all over again to transform them from chametz kitchens into kosher for Passover kitchens. The Israeli army had military rabbis whose mission is to tend to the religious aspects of the army. This began in 1948 when the Israeli military was established. And the story behind it is inspiring and is very much reminding us of what we are experiencing right now. The first head chaplain of the Israeli Defense Force was Rabbi Shlomo Goren. Rabbi Goren founded and served as the first head of the military rabbinate and subsequently as the third Ashkenazi chief rabbi of Israel from 1973 to 1983, after which he established a yeshiva in Jerusalem, which he headed until his passing in 1994. Rabbi Goren succeeded in convincing the first Prime Minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, that a Jewish military needed a kosher, a synagogue and a kosher kitchen in every unit, and that Shabbat be a day of rest, meaning that there is no training sessions in the military on Shabbat. And indeed, this is the law in Israel to this day. Only national security activities may be carried out on Shabbat in the IDF. But the ordinary drills are not allowed on the Shabbat. Yet it was far from simple. Remember what was the earlier years? Not everybody was, when Israel was established as a secular state, and most of its early leaders were not religious. So the struggle to establish kosher kitchens in the IDF reached a high point with the approach of Passover in the year 1950. There were units that refused to kosher their kitchens and dining rooms for Passover, cleaning them from chametz. One such unit was the famous elite division known as the Tzanchanim. That's Israeli paratroopers, known as the creme de la creme of the Israeli army. They objected to these three things: koshering a kitchen, setting up a synagogue, and the cessation of training exercises on the Shabbat. They argued they had no religious members, so there's no need for these things. To secure the koshering of the kitchens for Passover, Rabbi Goren needed to influence the commanding officer of the entire division. Now, at that point was Yigal Alon. And he got him to issue a decree ordering the commander of the Tzanchanim to allow the koshering of their kitchen. This he did. And when the late Ariel Sharon was promoted to the commander of the Tzanchanim, he took the same route. There's no religious soldiers here. We're not the types to eat kosher. We do not need the synagogue. Who would pray in it? We need to train 7 days a week. So Sharon would not allow any of those among the Tzanchanim and all these kosher things. One day, the entire battalion had a parachuting maneuver in the north. There were 700 paratroopers involved, and their parachutes were gold and white colored. Rabbi Goren, as the military chief rabbi, was there to observe the training, and he turned to Ariel Sharon and said, "The paratroopers with the white parachutes look like angels coming down from heaven. But how can angels eat non-kosher?" So Ariel Sharon told him that he'd strike a deal with him. "We don't have even one religious paratrooper," Sharon said, "and so our paratroopers don't need all this religious stuff. No kosher, no synagogue, and no Shabbat. The moment you bring me the first religious paratrooper, I'll kosher all the kitchens. I will allow you to build synagogues, and I will stop training on Shabbat." Sharon assumed this would take a while, because remember, in those early years, there were in all of Israel 400 yeshiva students. Where would Rabbi Goren come up with a religious paratrooper? Rabbi Shlomo Goren immediately responded that he accepted the deal and that he would be the first religious paratrooper. Do you know what it takes to become a paratrooper? In our synagogue, we have a former member of the Tzanchanim, and he tells us, Eddie Halak, the most rigorous and tough training. You cannot imagine how difficult it is. Most people don't even make it to the selection process. And while Rabbi Goren was a military rabbi at the time, he was not a paratrooper. He was a scholar, a philosopher, a rabbi, but not a paratrooper. So he took the Army's parachuting course, and at the end of the training, he succeeded in breaking his leg and walking with a cast and a cane. But ultimately, he got his paratrooper's wings. His secular comrades were inspired. One of the jumps took place at night. It was a very tough jump for him because his leg was still injured. While he was drifting down, Ariel Sharon had the entire battalion standing below him next to their jeeps. And the entire battalion started clapping and cheering. "Hooray to Rabbi Goren! Hooray to Rabbi Goren!" You could hear it everywhere. It was like thunder in the middle of the desert. And Rabbi Goren had come down. Ariel Sharon stood by his word, and he changed the entire unit. He koshered the kitchen, set the kosher standard at the highest level, built a synagogue, and all the paratroopers who fell in battle were memorialized in it. Additionally, they also stopped training on Shabbat. As far as religious conditions were concerned, it was now the best unit. And from that point on, hundreds of religious soldiers come to fill its ranks. To this very day, this unit is filled with some of the greatest young Jewish soldiers, including many Torah-observant young men wearing kippot and praying each day. My friends, I share this story with you because going back to our celebration of the last days of Passover, as the Jewish people stood at the front of the sea, God said, "Speak to the Jewish people, let them go forth." But God wanted our partnership and our leadership. He wanted us to take initiative. He wanted us to jump. This was the gift of Nachshon. He could have said, "Who am I to act? How could I act? How can I jump in the water?" But Nachshon was a leader, a man of faith. God said, "It is time to travel forth." So that's what we do. And we do not wait until others do it first. That, the Medrash says, is the reason that royalty in the Jewish nation comes from this individual, Nachshon. From him came King David, King Solomon, and eventually Mashiach and all of his descendants. My friends, what does it mean to be a leader? With all that's going on today, leaders must lead. This does not mean to say that they don't follow. But what they follow is different from what most people follow. They don't conform for the sake of conforming. They don't do what others do merely because others are doing it. They follow an inner voice, a call. They have a vision, not of what is, but what might be. They think out of the box. They march to a different tune. And I'd like to include Rabbi Yisrael Goldstein, the Chabad leader of Poway in California, who had the initiative when he came out from the bathroom, preparing himself to say Yiska for his dear parents, who I knew, Uncle Yossi and his Rebbitzin, I knew personally. He saw the gunman. He saw the lady lying on the ground. And he moved forward, grabbed the gun. He was the Nachshon at the moment. He jumped, grabbed the gun, lost his 2 fingers, meanwhile saved his community. See, people like that think out of the box. They march to a different tune. See, let me tell you something, my friends. Dead fish go with the flow. Live fish swim against the current. The salmon fish will swim thousands of miles against the current just to go back to its birthplace and to create a new generation of salmon. To the story, if Rabbi Goren had sought another religious volunteer to be the first religious paratrooper, it might have never worked. When Arik Sharon saw the young rabbi himself prepared to actually become a paratrooper, so long as they'd keep kosher in his unit, his actions showed how much he cared about the issue. This moved even the tough guy like Sharon, who is characterized as a bulldozer. It was the jump that convinced Sharon to come to Rabbi Goren's aid, to the extent that the paratrooper unit was the unit that assisted with kosher matters more than any other Israeli military units. And because of that reward, look what happened. So back to Nachshon, who jumped into the Sea of Reeds. It enumerates the rewards that he received. His name was Nachshon because he jumped into the water. So many great descendants came from him. And from him will eventually come, from Judah, Mashiach will come. Today is no different, my friends. There's so much to do, so much to be accomplished on so many fronts. What we need is people who will jump. My friends, my friend, relative, Rabbi Yisrael Goldstein, he jumped and saved so many people's lives. My friends, please, as we go about our day, changing our homes back to the regular after the Passover, please have in mind the heroic Mrs. Lori Gilbert Kay, who was gunned down in Chabad Poway because she was Jewish. Let us pray for the speedy recovery of all those who were injured. And as his sister, Rabbi Goldstein's sister, said, they worked on him for 8 hours, but sadly, seems they won't be able to save his middle fingers. But he has the great reward of knowing that he saved his community. My friends, today, as we conclude, please, jump, my friends, jump. Do something different for who you are and what we represent. Be ready to jump for good things. May Hashem bless us with only good news from now on. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.